Hello, today we will be going through process of setting up some procedural animation, procedural setup. We will go over some foundations of procedural animation and some neat techniques and concepts. Let's start recreating this setup. One thing that prepared before is this simple asset. I probably will share it. But basically, this guy just outputs text as a packed fragments with attribute that can separate letters and words. It doesn't actually matter that much, but may come in handy at some point. This aimed to intermediate and upper beginner users, and it will involve some VEX, but this is just a foundation, so nothing too crazy. So let's start. Let's add our first node that we will use quite a lot, attribute noise, and we'll give our text initial animation. One issue though, as you can see, we don't have updated position, and to get over it, we will just create a noise attribute and set the position from attribute wrangle here. So set noise, and it will do just current position plus equals the noise attribute that we had before. And right away, let's set up our main animation. So what we need to do is have our text dragged into Abyss. And by the way, what I can see, because of zero amplitude, we have to update it to see the difference. And let's quickly set the noise to zero centered and give it some animation and reduce roughness quite a bit. And maybe more size. It's just like additional slight touch. Then let's do main animation. So we will use attribute wrangle that will run on points. And let's initialize some variables and some parameters. So I will need for all my setup only 3 main points in time. Time of start of animation and time when our tentacle wicked alien thing will grab letters or whatever object we have, and then when animation ends and letters get dragged into Abyss or simply just under the visible screen. So first argument will be time start, and it will be equal slider time start. Next one is time catch, and the last one is time end. So we will create these parameters, and we will go to edit parameter interface, and let's increase range from 0 to 1 to 0 to 10. Let's adjust some animation, and the first thing I need to do is actually animation of drag of our letters. We will work in reverse direction. The letters will hold our main animation. The next expression I will create, to me, is kind of the main expression in procedural animation in general. It's the foundational one, in my opinion, and I use it a lot. So let's create a variable that will hold this magical expression, and it will be fit of time attribute and from time catch, because it's kind of ending animation when it dragged into Abyss, and from time catch to time end, we will output value from 0 to 1. And let's remap this thing using trump expression, and we will call it remap animation. And as a second argument, we will use anim itself in this case. And let's see Let's output this attribute just to see what it's doing. Let's call it fall anim. And this will be just anim in our case. Let's see what happens with this attribute after we create right now. So you can see that from some point in time to some point in time, it's changing from 0 to 1. Nice. And of course, if we remap this, we will get nice animation with some easing pretty fast. So let's set position y to this animation variable multiplied by amount y. We will store this attribute just in case. Probably we won't use it, but it's nice to have it at this moment. So let's go negative and probably we'll change the range of this parameter in parameter interface. Let's test. Yep, it goes away. Probably we can make it shorter, whole animation. So yeah, kind of like this. Okay. And we can add some anticipation to it by going under the 0. It should be almost subtle. It should be something like this. Yep. So it could be adjusted later. For now, I will place it earlier in timeline, just not to wait it for too long. And additionally, what I want to do, I want to add some randomization in time. So instead of using this time attribute, I will create variable called time, and I will replace this by my newly created variable. And here I will just add random. Actually, in this case, it's better to subtract random, and I will use ptnum as a source, and I will create seed attribute. Yeah, you can use two variables in random, which can be more convenient in some cases. Yeah, let's see what we got. And probably we would need to multiply this value to some kind of amount, time random amount, time rand amount. And let's create it. Let's add some slight randomization. Even this too much, in my opinion. So kind of like this. Can change seed. Can easily extend animation. That's okay. So here we will create null that we will call text out. And let's work on our geometry of tentacles, curves, wherever. So here we will add node. I will delete geometry but keep the points. And then I will do a couple of things with it. I will create transform, but before that I will create time shift. And I will set animation to just one frame, so I will freeze it. The reason why I'm doing this is just because of getting more control. So here in pivot translate and transform, I will use centroid expression. We'll refer to first input of this node, and we will use the X keyword for X axis and the same for Y and Z axis. It's just, again, for the sake of control and consistency. Here I will create transform scale and I will scale it on X axis. In this case, we can easily adjust it later, and I will flatten this on y-axis. And next I will move it down. I will delete, reset all my scale changes and just go translate here, and I will call it position, just to have it separated. And after time shift, I also want to insert enumerate node to store current point number to be used later with add node. And here I will create a merge node. One thing that matters is the fact that actually the order is important in this case. So let's see our point indices, and if I change it, you see that we're starting from top part, but we actually want to start from bottom part, I mean the point indexes. So, and we will keep it like this. So first bottom part and then top part. The reason why I care about this is because of curve view attribute that we will use extensively later. So let's create add node. Here we will connect our points by group. We will change mode by attribute, and attribute name would be our ID that we generated earlier. My mistake is that I only created an enumerate attribute on one side of my branch, so it would be like this instead. So now both sides have this attribute ID. Then resample, as you might guess. And because of the fact my geometry is moving, probably it should be like this. I'm sorry. Yeah. So because my geometry is moving, I have my point count inconsistent. I want to avoid this, and I will use maximum segments instead. Let's work on reveal animation for our curves. So now we have this animation. And let's grow this. We will create attribute wrangle, and we will utilize curve view attribute here. And we will do the following thing. We will use, we will set our position to new value using premuv function. And from this premuv function will get us value of position attribute of current primitive number using some parametric coordinate. So let's call it alof. In this case, let's initialize this. And initially it would be equal our curve view attribute. So basically premuv function gets us value of position using this parametric coordinate. Because it's a curve, we can use one-dimensional coordinate and it would work. So right now, if we have done everything correctly, we won't see any changes. Nice. Let's work with this value and let's see what will happen if I add here fit 0, 1 in this case. And I will create two parameters, minimum and maximum. And let's see what this thing will give us. So as you can see, as I change these two parameters, I can vary growth of the curve itself. Because I'm in wrangle, I can randomize it and I can animate it. So let's copy some things from here. Right now, I will probably grab everything here. But before we set our position. So let's initialize these things and let's quickly reconnect this to these parameters, but instead I think it's a good time to have our setup in subnet, and I will edit parameter interface. It would be just faster a little bit, and I will grab parameters from here. So let's for now leave only these parameters. I will set apply. The default values would be taken from this values right now, which is kinda okay. Now we have these parameters. Here I will call it growth animation. Let's color it. Not that aggressive. And let's use channel references from our node. So it would be time start in this case, time catch, and time end. That way we will be able to synchronize all these values and don't care about it too much. However, the seed value we will leave as it is right now. I mean, not connected to anything. And let's animate this. First of all, let's correct our animation variable to go from time catch, time start to time catch. Time start, time catch. Maybe we will add some additional offset here, for example, time catch -1, but for now we're fine as we are. And instead of using maximum value, we can also multiply it by animation parameter. And as you can see, we have our growth. So probably time catch minus channel catch offset, for example, just to have it externally. And let's use 2 seconds. So my even one probably will be fine. Now let's change the character of this animation to something wicked and slightly aggressive. Let's change interpolation to something like monotone cubic to get smooth but not so smooth interpolation between our keyframes. Let's see what we have. Probably this part is not needed. Let's do something like this, just to make it kinda chaotic. But for now, it's all the same. Instead of using the ptnum, we'll use primnum since we want it to be randomized for each curve. We can add a bit more control to it by using additional variable that will go from 0 to 1 for each primitive. So let's call it prim remap, and it will be equal initially float as a function from current prim number. I need this to get float variable, and primnum, which is integer, I need it to be treated as a float. That's why I'm using this function here. And I will divide it by numprim -1, and this is in parentheses. And I will remap this again using additional ramp, prim remap, and let's call it tramp prim remap, and I will feed this here. And lastly, I will use additional multiplier here, channel prim offset, time prim offset, for example. And I will add it here or subtract it here. Let's subtract it. Prim, remap. And to see the effect here, let's turn off the random portion of it and add time prim offset. So as you can see, now we have it with slight offset. Probably we can add, but I will leave it to you. Now we can control the way this thing grows. I will change it to B-spline, and I can choose in which order this will grow. So I will delete one point here. Just something like this. Super cool that this is easily adjustable. For the sake of convenience, I will go one level up, press right button, and I will call the parameters option from this menu to see my parameters forever. Yeah, here, as you can see, I can adjust it. Next, let's add some additional control to it and some additional character. Here I will create a null, call it curves initial, and before even growth animation, I will create attribute noise, and right now I can use it directly on the position. Let's do some adjustments to this node. As you can see, because I have moving curves and my noise is not moving, so this movement happens without my permission. I want to change the location attribute, like the sampling attribute for the noise, from position to something else. Unfortunately, because I want to use the curve U attribute, it won't work right away because this is a float attribute and this expecting us to have vector attribute. But it's easily solvable. I will just go to use VEXpression, and as you can see here, we have some variable names, which when we set, we can get like changing behavior of our noise, attribute noise node. So let's set position to curve U. And right away we can see we have different result. And as you can see, it's exactly the same on all of our curves. We can set it to 0 centered. I will animate it slightly, or not slightly. And of course I need to have different noise pattern on each curve. Of course I see that roughness should be a lot less, and too much of amplitude here. And let's use a little trick to get different offset of noise on each primitive. I will use attribute randomized node, and I will set offset externally. So this node, because there is an attribute offset that called exactly like this, like the offset that this node expecting. Right now it's not quite what we want because it's random on each point. We'll do simple trick and we'll promote this offset attribute from here. We will set it to primitives to have different value for each primitive, and we will promote it from primitive to points. And now we have consistent offset value controlled externally. Yeah, something like this. For now it's not looking the way we want it to look, but we can adjust this. Next, I want to blend this noise with initial geometry to have my last and first point to be consistent, because trick that we do here is to match our text with the curves, at least at some point in time. For now, as you can see, it's all over the place, but it should stay consistent. So we will utilize attribute remap and probably will set it here. And we will use node called blend shapes. We could have used attribute warp or attribute wrangle to map this, but this version is also feasible and it's actually faster. The fastest option to have blending between two sources. Here in attribute remap, we want to remap curve view, and new name would be noise mask. And here I made a mistake, just curve view without add sign. And using this attribute noise mask, we will change blend masking to set from attribute. Here we will call noise mask, and we will explicitly say that we need this attribute from first input. And now we have this controlled by this ramp. I'll set interpolation to be spline. And now, as you can see, we have tip of our curves matching the letters, which is what we want. So let's add additional layer of animation here. Probably I need element size more to have this thing working. And next I want to imitate behavior when it's not growing directly to our letters, but also kind of searches for prey. And to do so, I can actually duplicate my setup here. Here I wanted to connect attribute remap name of attribute to blend mask attribute, just to have it consistent and not having to correct this in a couple of places. So here new attribute would be called like deep mask. Now we have this attribute called tip mask, and it's working here. Here we will remap it to only tips. And let's correct our noise to add some randomization in offset. As you can see, we already have our result. Maybe like this, maybe different pulse duration, and maybe element size could be smaller. It really depends on what you're aiming for. And now we can adjust this animation using basically the same principle. I wonder if we can duplicate some node directly. Let's try this. I don't know if we will save some time or get ourselves into the trouble instead. We will rename this attribute to catch animation. And here, instead of use this time end, we now will use time catch. Do we have this time catch minus thing called duration? Let's create variable for this. Float duration channel duration. You can adjust it as you like later. And last point in time would be time catch, and starting point would be time catch minus duration. And here we also have remap, but we want to use it in different way. Other way around this case. So at some point we'll catch it, and also let's add a slide or a shoot here. And we will add additional blend shape node. And as an attribute here, we will use catch animation from the first input. And we will remap it to previous noise. Hopefully it makes sense. And let's see if it works. Yes, it works. So as you can see, at some point here we have this weird shaking. It's because of the fact that here we still need prim num instead of pt num. But yeah, we already have our random thing going. Yes. Let's add sweep. Sweep would just use round tube. Right now, apply scale along curve. Something like this. Let's attribute randomize the p-scale, but we will set distribution to custom ramp. We'll fit values, and we will set dimension to 1, and we will generate it for primitives, and then again we will attribute promoted from primitives to points to have each point on primitive have the same scale attribute. And now we can control it pretty easily and remap this thing as we want. So first value would be like this, and second would be something like this, and in sweep I will set radius to 0.5. I will remap it slightly in a different way. Let's adjust our scale attribute, something like this. Let's add color node to distinguish between text and tentacles, because it's highly stylized and flat thing at the moment. Let's see what we have. Maybe this first animation could be more stretched, something like this, and the time would be shorter to have it more aggressive. Let's see what we have. Too soon in this case. So yeah, this thing is definitely adjustable, and pretty flexible. And here we call it catch animation. And we can work a bit more. What's great about blend node, that we can actually blend outwards. So here, okay, in this case it doesn't work. Why? Let's check the attribute here, catch animation. Seems like either it's too fast, or I can see it's kind of like just one frame. And this is because of my duration hasn't been set at all. Yeah. So now we will see the difference. So now we have a blend. But also if we will increase this a bit more, yeah, we can go in a different direction here. We can kind of exaggerate it over one, just to check if it's working properly. So catch animation, yeah, that's okay. This is pretty much it. I'm hoping this was helpful. I think there was a lot of useful concepts and techniques that will help you throughout your procedural animation journey.